examples on that. I'll skip the size of the market. I'll just talk about unmet cognitive needs. There's been a variety of surveys and studies done, right? And the baby boomers are worried about a lot of things. Am I going to, outlive my money? Am I going to outlive my mind, right? Am I going to lose my mind or am I going to lose my money? These are both very important, but big. I got my money, my money. There's been some rap songs specifically about these two concerns. But one of the biggest concerns is the loss of mental capacity. And they can feel it, right? You do cross a threshold, right? When people say, I feel like I might be losing it, around 65 to 70, you start to forget most of what you try to remember. And that's an important crossover threshold where, even though that slope is the same, the accumulated decline reaches some pretty precipitous, not precipitous, very interesting threshold points on some of these cognitive tests. It's around that age that transition takes place. And so they can feel it. They know it's happening. They don't want to take medicine for it. The concept of somehow getting healthy through exercise of some sort is just a much more resonant concept than, popping a pill, which, by the way, the pills don't work. Aricept and others, especially in the later stage. Why is this important? Well, there's a stack of cognitive quality of, from cognition to quality of life, there's a stack that goes on here. That your quality of life depends on your cognitive function. That depends on your brain function. That can be improved, and that will improve your quality of life. So starting with the basic, accuracy of, take for example, cognitive input. As you age, much of the sensory input to your brain declines, right? So the acoustic discrimination of, high and low notes, so the transitions between them, your visual perception, all of your senses are degraded before your cortex ever gets access to the data. So it's as if there was a fuzzification of the inputs. And if that fuzzification persists, then cognition, basic cognitive function declines over time. So by sharpening the senses, sharpening your capacity to hear precisely and to see precisely, not only enriches your life, it bootstraps the brain's capacity to learn, the neuroplasticity of the brain, to get into a healthier mode where, even beyond the initial training set, you're learning throughout your life in a way that you weren't before. So rather than a doom loop of sort of isolation and detachment, you're enriching much of your life, enriching, and that leads, of course, to a variety of other benefits. So there are a number of companies that have claimed, and because this is an obvious market need, and it'll become more obvious as we extend physical health, the need to extend mental health will become all the more acute and obvious. Great, 10 minutes. So Posit's the only company we know of that has a clinical basis for their claims. Right? They've done a number of studies, 30 of them have been published in peer-reviewed journals, and they show cognitive benefits. To summarize the charts on the right, I'll make two interesting points. First off is, on average, they show that after going through the training regimen, you can reverse 10 years of aging. So on that chart I was showing with the slope, you can sort of reverse the clock by 10 years, just from the initial exercise set. And that leads to some other interesting benefits I won't go through. Oops, let me go back here. I won't go through all of the, process. These are sort of the lower level of that stack. But it leads to functional benefits higher up on that pyramid I showed a moment ago. For example, there was a study recently done by an insurance company that showed that if their elderly drivers took this program, the crash risk went down 50%. One of the most dramatic impacts they've seen on things you can do to make drivers safer. And they've already have a number of anecdotal data points of folks who claim this to save their lives in a specific instance. And of course, on-road driving safety, other tests you can take short of crashing to show your braking distance, basic fundamentals of reaction speed, and mental processing. And of course, this can often dramatically decrease the consumption of other healthcare needs, such as just the simple act of slipping into depression, largely relate to one's cognitive function. And if you improve it, life is just a much more pleasant place than the top of that pyramid. So that all rolls up to the products that they're offering. An example of a company we've invested in that we've seen over a number of years, growing nicely despite the recession, much like this conference has been growing nicely despite the recession. The interest in this segment, out in online retail as well, outweighs other economic downdrafts that some folks have seen. So the company's doing quite well. Now, this is interesting. It's a slide with a build. Okay. Where'd the data go? It's also interesting, the Pew Internet Project, they keep finding new and interesting data, but you may have seen some statistics depending on their data on what the baby boomers are doing online and their online usage. And it's actually quite interesting how much that's changed if I go forward to 2008. The dramatic change, in some cases, doubling or going up almost 10x or doubling or, dramatically increasing. The bottom line, according to their sort of qualitative assumption roll-up of the data, as many of you know, is that the baby boomer population is not only online, they're online in a much richer way than before. And interestingly, they're adopting the latest technologies of wireless access, and you name it, at a pace that you might expect of a teenager. We have another company, by the way, I&MI, that does market research using cell phones, where they can see exactly everything that someone consumes in a day: radio, TV, advertising, text messaging, everything. Van Nielsen panel, if you will, but a passive panel, so no bias introduced, just it sees all. And what they found is that basically women and women skewing older are some of the most fierce multicasters you'll find, with multiple media going at the same time, television, online surfing, and comparable only to teenage boys, but different. They use different things. They don't use the phone as much. They use the internet and television, but they actually consume more media than on any other segment, which is interesting for marketeers and advertisers. So that's the most of the purchases. The vast majority of commerce used by women and now increasingly boomer age women. So this will be the last slide, and I don't know if we want to do Q&A or not. What interests me about a future opportunity, I alluded to it earlier, the sort of eBay for information idea, builds on a few points, is that we have a cohort, these baby boomers, who are very different than their parents, and even different than the cohort that follows. And that they, as I alluded to, they spend more time online than even those in the 18 to 44 segment. Right? This is a recent study by Nielsen. They're highly connected, they're consuming media, they're doing most purchases. Even versus the younger cohort, versus their parents, they're much more educated. They're not looking to retire, and they are connected. But in many cases, there's an asymmetry of time and information. There's an asymmetry of wealth and time, which is there are a lot of folks in the U.S. economy and increasingly the world economy who are connected, have accumulated knowledge and wisdom, and they have a lot of time in some cases. And then you have other folks in other parts of the world who don't have those resources and might want to tap into, you name it, pick an information service. It could be as simple as graphic arts, it could be as complex as legal advice, everything in between. When the economy is shifting to an information economy and a services economy, which is easily distributed over an internet medium, right? You can change the way in which workflows are divided up and farmed out. It's the whole wave of outsourcing, which has in many cases been thought of as an outsourcing to India or to China. For America, I think the baby boomers offer an alternative vision, an opportunity to outsource to the United States, to, in a sense, not offshore, but outsource to groups of folks who want to stay engaged. And there have been a variety of studies that, for example, in the context of education, you can get a much healthier dynamic with different age cohorts in an educational context than a similar age cohort. Folks in their 30s teaching other folks in their 30s is not as effective as more traditional teacher-pupil age difference. And I think there's something here. And so when I say we haven't found it, we've tried to invest in companies that are market makers. Right? First over email, then over the phone with Ingenio, to connect expertise with seekers of it. And this can apply to just about any field. Like if I think about my own job, I would easily pay $10 or $20 for a web librarian to do all kinds of sporadic, random ad hoc queries. Like, we're looking at a new company, can you find me the URLs of 10 competitors? And in my mind, I envision that being outsourced somewhere to India or what have you, and some crack programmer goes and finds. And it's a way to do web searches and work and invest their time in a way that I just can't as effectively. Or even just as an outlier, get someone else's opinion. What does someone else find looking at this question, whatever it might be, that I wasn't able to find? I think the baby boomers can serve a market like that in a very rich way, and they tap into something that frankly would make them feel more fulfilled, could resonate with the neuroplasticity argument I was making, that staying engaged throughout your life is a key to your health, not only cognitively, but to bodily health as well. And present an alternative for our economy